Well, our flower gardens are starting to come into full bloom, so I thought I'd just take you on a little tour and show you what they currently look like. This is the garden beside our driveway that I built early on after we moved here. It's basically a square made with these blocks that I actually found in Kingston. The industry was going out of business and they had thrown all these into a big pile. So I got a bunch of them and made the perimeter for these gardens. There's actually 4 sections in here with a cross sort of in the middle of an open area. This middle band here, I've got purple salvia growing all up through the middle of it. And then this square here, I've got a lot of coneflowers and white platycodon or balloon flower here in nice bloom right now. Very pretty 3-inch blooms. Purple coneflowers are always a good bet here in the sandy soils. They're fairly drought resistant and they bloom a long time and the butterflies like them. Got some Nicotiana down here. Phlox is coming into bloom. We have some pink version here, and back here in this other garden we've got white phlox. And again, the insects and hummingbirds really like the phlox. It's a perennial and it comes back every year and it gradually gets to be a bigger and bigger clump. Here's my little section of elephant ears, which are basically large bulbs that you have to dig up every fall and bring them in, just like you would do with dahlias and that type of thing. There's a little Digitaria foxglove here. This garden beside our garage has become pretty full of Ostego Tea or Monarda bergamot, Monarda diadema, Ostego Tea. Tall, 3 feet, 4 feet high with bright red tops, and this being a mint typically spreads through underground rhizomes, so you can see it's covered half or more of the garden now after 7 or 10 years of being here. If you don't want it everywhere, you have to control it, or you could plant it in a container of some sort to contain it, but it's nice to see it spread through here. The hummingbirds love it. Has a beautiful smell. You can make tea out of it apparently. Obviously the name Ostego Tea. Here's some scarlet salvia annual. Got some comfrey next to it, little white composite flowers. And rounding the bend, some more Nicotiana. Here's a beautiful daylily. Don't have the specific name, but nice purpley mauve variety. It's just showing the edging of the garden that I did a few years ago when I picked a bunch of rocks up for edging my flower gardens. I got them locally on the sides of roads where construction was taking place, and I also got some of these limestone ones from a quarry where I was allowed access to pick through some scrap that they had. These rocks are all granitic in nature, and these were ones I actually got from the sides of the roads where they were doing blasting to push back the rock cut. So I managed to go through a lot of rubble and pick out some nice ones. This is an area that was always a bit of a problem to cut around with the lawnmower in amongst these red pine trees. So I decided to make a circular shape here in the pine trees and create my Hosta Garden in here. And now I don't have to try and weave around all these trees with the lawnmower. So I've got a whole bunch of different Hosta types in here. And I always like them because they look so tropical, and some of them get so big. Unfortunately, I'm losing the names of a lot of them, but yeah, this one's called King Size Plantain Lily. You can see it's just about to come into bloom, whereas a lot of the other ones I have are already bloomed. So they do vary at bloom time for these hostas. I think this is Big Daddy, one of my little garden sculpture lions. And here's a Francis Williams. There's a Blue Angel. This is an Empress Wu, which is one of the larger hostas, but it's not at its ultimate size yet. They take quite a while to get big. Here I believe is Avocado with the two-tone leaf. This is actually a T-Rex, which is another large one, but it's small so far here. Interesting leaf shapes and colors and sizes among the hosta. Another garden that I created just a couple years ago when I built the Hosta Garden using my rocks that I collected from the roadside construction. This one now is largely filled with the annual Cleomes, the spider plant. They seed themselves here quite readily. They get these pods as the flowers mature, and as they mature they get brittle and send hundreds of seeds down into the ground. So if you like a plant that seeds itself, an annual that seeds itself, this is a good choice. They're very pretty. They get tall. Butterflies like them. Back in here, surrounding my magnolia, I've got some zinnias too, tall zinnias, which I really like. They attract a lot of insects, come in all sorts of colors, stand tall. Down below you got a few marigolds. There's also in here dahlias that we put out. They still haven't bloomed. They take their time. And I've got an annual or a perennial sedum here. Big autumn joy, I think it's called. Another maroon and orange daylily. This is Penstemon digitalis, which is a white flowering perennial penstemon native to the area. And we'll go over to this garden, which I created a number, 5 or 6 years ago, I guess. Just dug up a portion of our lawn that I didn't want to keep cutting forever. And this one's got some liatris, a perennial plant native to North America in the prairies and savanna type habitats. I've got leaf cup in the middle, this tall perennial that really gets overpowering actually in the garden. So it's sprawling out right now. It has the nice flower heads on the top that again attract a lot of butterflies, so that's nice to have. And it gets its name because the leaves surround the stem in, like here, they're perfoliate. The stems are perfoliate. They go right through the leaves, and then water collects around in this little cup. And birds and insects will even come and drink out of that cup. Here's some more glorious large zinnias. Look at the size of these zinnias. This is a 6-inch flower head. Just beautiful, bright blooms. And I got a couple hydrangeas here. One is called Pinky Winky, and I forget what the other one is. I've probably lost the tag. They're similar. They turn in the flower head, the conical flower head here turns pink eventually. You can see a little bit of the pink coming in here. Quite attractive. I've got my Kentucky coffee tree. I've got 2 or 3 of these in the property now that they're not native to this exact location, but they grow in southern Ontario. More coneflowers. These white flowers here are obedient plant, Physostegia virginiana, and it's a nice perennial with nice clean dark green leaves going up the stem. Very pretty. A little mound of marigolds. A few more hostas I've planted around our oak tree, and look at our oak tree. It's got leaves again. They're smaller than normal, but it resprouted its leaves after the gypsy moth defoliated it, so I'm very happy to see that. Look at these beautiful leaves. front of our lower basement window, we've got this nice little collection of hollyhocks. This little garden has been developing over the last couple of years too. Originally it was just this right end here. And I put this little camper down elm here probably 10 years ago, and it's been growing quite nicely. Now this year a Sap Sucker decided to descend in here. In fact, he's here right now. He's always here. He loves sitting in here on this trunk of this tree, drilling his holes and drinking the sap. I actually covered it with burlap for a couple weeks, and I thought he had left, but he's still around. Hopefully he won't hurt the tree with all of his little tap holes. And it's kind of a neat umbrella tree. I always liked camper down elms. And then this end I added just a couple years ago, again with rocks I had gotten from construction along the roads. This is false sunflower, Helianthemum helianthoides. Forms a nice mound. It just sort of slowly grows wider. It doesn't really spread all through with roots. Very pretty plant. Got some smaller orange zinnias here. A variety of comb flowers in this garden. That was what the focus was going to be in here, and some other things are getting out of control. So I've got sort of typical purple comb flower. I got some white comb flower, swan, white swan I think it's called. And then I've got one that has a mixture of purpley and orange and yellow heads. My tall marigolds are coming into bloom. A couple shrubs I bring in each year are lantana, which is a tropical shrub, and it gets these beautiful orange and yellow flowers all over it, and the insects love it. Both of these I typically bring in because they're a tropical shrub and they won't survive the winter, but they struggle through the winter and get kind of crappy looking, almost like they're dying, and then when I bring them out the following year they get all spruced up again and look gorgeous. So here's a nice sunflower that just happened to grow in here. I didn't really plant it, probably from the bird seeds I feed. I had a bunch of different sunflowers I was going to plant, but never got around to getting them all in. This grass here is known as side oats grama. It's a native prairie grass, and has these really neat seed heads along the side of the stem, as the name would suggest. And it's getting 3 feet or more tall here. I got a couple clumps of that. Some of my clematis still in bloom here. And we've had quite a struggle with our trumpet vine over the years, but finally it's starting to produce some flowers. One of the keys we find to getting these to develop is to make sure the plant doesn't send up lots of lower shoots. I was probably mistaken to put this plant in the garden edge because it constantly sends up shoots from roots that it sends out through the garden. And I found that if you let all those shoots grow, then it spends all of its energy putting into new growth of new plants all over the garden. So what we do now is we try to keep these lower leaves on these vines stripped off, and keep the new shoots in the garden cut back. And now it seems to spend more energy putting it into flowers, so that's nice. It's a very pretty plant. It is quite aggressive, as most people would tell you, I think. And this is getting to be somewhat nice looking. There are plants in the local area I've seen that are just covered in trumpets, so hopefully in a couple of years or so this will get better. Anyhow, I hope you've enjoyed that little tour of the gardens. They're looking pretty good now after we finally gotten a bit of rain.